What a beautiful place we see here, huh? That's a beautiful town. So let's jump into this. All right, so we're going to talk about the sustainability incentive that the city has. So for the year 2023, the city has budgeted $45,000 for these zero waste events, the sustainability incentive. And I wanted to start off by making sure that everybody knows where that website is, steamboatsprings.net, and with the /1301 and then sustainability incentives. The event application process, hopefully all of you who are applying for these events need permits for such, have already seen that there's a place in there where you can put a check mark or say yes or no to whether you plan to pursue that sustainability incentive with the event that you're hosting. As soon as you click say yes on that, then that flags the process to include me in the review, in which case I'm going to reach out to you, the event producer, and give you some free consultation, and we'll chat about your event. We'll go over what opportunities might exist for a focus on zero waste. And then I will also provide with you the vendors that I'm aware of that provide these services to help you get to zero waste. The other thing that I'm here to do is to provide technical assistance to those zero waste event vendors. So I'm not just here for the people who are putting on the show, but also the people who are working behind the scenes. So I'm happy to help however I can to help us get to zero waste at the events. After the event, what's required is detailed receipts to be submitted along with the incentive payment request form, which we'll show at the end of this slide, and any zero waste vendor report that's provided. So if you're working with Dakota at Yampa Valley Sustainability Council, for instance, then you would, I know that they provide a report at the end of the event. And so if they provide that, we would just ask that you send that along. Helps us to then educate or be educated on the process and what was accomplished. I don't know if all vendors do that. I just know that they do. So I'm just throwing it out there. The more information, the better for us, so that we can then help other events down the road. Okay, so level 1, zero waste pre-planning. In the past, this level 1 incentive was a $60 value that you could meet with a vendor to discuss the potential for your event. Now that the city has hired me, I am your free consultation, and we'll sit together, like I said, and just brainstorm what's out there, what kind of options exist, and we'll do all that based on what type of event you have. That's my email address there. I'm pretty responsive, so you can email me there later on. I'll give you my phone number if you really need it. The vendors that I have learned of as of earlier today, sounds like we might have another one or two. Diversion designers, I've spoken with Amber. I don't think she's on the meeting today, but this is something that they do, is provide zero waste event services, along with Jenny at Minimal Impact Lifestyle. And as we said, Yampa Valley Sustainability Council, Dakota, who's right there in the room. Okay, level 2, no single-use drinks. And this one's been a tricky one, and we'll talk about those pictures on the right. So level 2, basically no single use. We're talking about reusable, refillable cups, mugs. The incentive is $150 towards the event. Pre-planning is recommended because I'm going to talk to you about, let's talk about weather. If it's super cold, as we've all experienced, if it's snowing, the impact to one thing, for instance, is the water monster. Water can freeze in there. I've got a couple images there of some igloos, thinking maybe since they are, smaller, you can have more of them in more places easily. But there's still the potential that you could have freezing in the nozzle or the dispenser. So it may be that this isn't the best idea for a super cold event, but in the summertime, springtime, definitely an option. So it's just something to consider as you're moving forward. If you have wine that you're selling or beer, please consider cups that are reusable. Maybe they are logoed for the event. Creates an opportunity for a souvenir afterwards and bragging to all their friends later on. We're just really trying to get away from single use. And it doesn't matter if it's a bottle or if it's a can. If it's a single use item or, glass, plastic, aluminum, single use is what we're trying to get away from in this incentive. So that's really what we're going after. Again, we want to have those receipts when you submit your request for payment to show that you actually did that. So we'll have questions at the very end as well. So level 3, hopefully you'll appreciate all these fun images. I try to speak in pictures as much as words because I'm going to miss something and the picture is going to cue me. So the level 3 event uses only compostable, recyclable, or reusable materials. This incentive used to be, I think, at $250. We bumped it up this year to $300 for the event, and pre-planning is required. So again, really trying to make sure that you have time with me and we can talk about what's available and make sure that we know we're all on the same page. The only events that are eligible for this are that have food are the permitted food vendors. And so I kind of thought I would go through some of these images. One thing I wanted to make sure to draw to your attention is the word biodegradable and compostable. Those two words are not synonymous. And so when we talk about having a compostable material for a cup or for food, you want to look for the word compostable, and even specifically the certification, this BPI compostable. It's actually certified that it's compostable. They've tested it. They know it's going to decompose. Biodegradable is just that. It biologically degrades, but it doesn't compost and become part of the soil as well. One event I learned about this week was the Steamboat gravel race, and in talking with Greer, she was letting me know that they are using TerraCycle. That's the image you have in the top right-hand side. Those boxes are called zero waste boxes. And because of the packaging that comes from the nutrition bars and that they've been distributing throughout the race, they have decided to invest, which they've been doing, is investing in these zero waste boxes. They collect those wrappers, send them to TerraCycle, and then they get made into another material. And what I've been looking in the research and checking out their website, seeing what they're doing. So it's really cool, all the options they have. But if it's possible, when you're serving food, instead of things like condiment packaging, consider the reusable, the refillable. I have a picture of a ketchup, squeeze bottle. So that item is, you got multiple uses out of that, but it's also a recyclable container when it's finished. Another option is pumps, that you can use at a larger capacity. So if we just think that way, is how are we going to minimize that waste that's produced from all the different parts of the food? When we talk about drink cups, I know that there are aluminum cups that are made by Ball Corporation that are all the craze right now. That is an option, and if you're looking at recyclable, Jenny turned me on to the R cup, which is an opportunity to work with a vendor who will deliver cups to the event, take them back, wash them, repackage them, send them off to the next event. And so it's a really cool way to avoid the waste altogether. So I encourage you to check that out. And then the trivia for the presentation is going to be, which cup is recyclable? So the one on the left is a styrofoam cup. The second one is a polyfiber, so it's paper with plastic mixed into the manufacturing of it. The third one is a number 5 plastic cup. and that's from Panera Bread, it looks like. And the one on the right, the fourth one, is a red Solo cup, and it is a number 6 polystyrene cup. So I would say, any of you could throw it out there. Do we think that that styrofoam cup is going to be recycled? No. The paper cup, the second one, is not acceptable in the recycling bin for the most part. You may have some collectors who'll take it, but some who won't. So in order to avoid that down the road, we just stay away from that. The Solo cup on the right is a number 6. Again, some haulers may take it, some processors might be able to find a home for that, but it's not widely accepted. So the one you want to stick with is that if you're going to use reusable, is a plastic reusable cup or aluminum cup. Plastics that are easily recyclable are 1s, 2s, and 5s. So things to think of. Again, when we have our pre-planning, we're going to talk about all this. So I just wanted to make you aware. And I threw this in here to check with your haulers because it's really important. If you really want this stuff to get recycled and composted, you have to get it collected in a clean fashion, or as clean as you can get it, making sure you're separating things correctly, that you're checking on that work to make sure things have gotten sorted correctly. And then we have to make sure it gets taken where it needs to go. And then it has to get there in a fashion that the hauler can actually accept it. So check with the hauler that you're going to work with. I know that's part of the permit process, is identifying who's going to actually be your trash and recycling, how you're going to handle that. So make sure you talk to them, either you or your zero waste vendor communicates with those processors and haulers to make sure that this is all going to work. Okay. All right, here we go with level 4. This is like going all out, okay? We want to keep all the waste as much as we possibly can out of the landfill with this idea. And I'm going to talk about the signage on the right here in a minute, and but we'll go through some of these bullets. We have to, in this zero waste level 4, we want to make sure that we have people at the stations, you can call them zero waste stations, and that someone's job or multiple people's jobs are to station or staff those collection spots. So you're going to have, probably 2 or 3 bins there. We want to make sure we have proper signage on them. But that doesn't make that the people who are the users of the event or the attendees are actually going to read, look, care, understand. Maybe they don't speak the language that's on the sign. Maybe they don't see what's on the sign. So we want to make sure that we make it as easy as possible and as consistent as possible. Kind of like I was saying, if all food touches paper, we all know that all the food is compostable. If all the drinks are recyclable, it's really easy to have that messaging in our signage. It's also really easy to train our volunteers. A lot of us have volunteers who are offering to do this work, and that's totally legit. I'm happy to help train. You will have this video that's being recorded available as well. And again, people can reach out to me. So this incentive is going to cover 75% of the cost up to $5,000. So that's a pretty big deal. Again, level 1 pre-planning is required because we want to make sure that we're communicating well what needs to happen, where things are going. Yeah. So what you can, again, we want to have those receipts. We want to have proof of the purchase, what you worked on, what you did. Photos to show staffing is a really good idea for as far as documentation of this part of this level of diversion. So we have volunteers working, or we've hired somebody. You either own or you rent the zero waste stations, and those opportunities exist with the vendors that we've identified. You're going to need to contract for the recycling and compost pickup. So all those have expenses that might be higher than otherwise. And so the documentation we're looking for, like I said, is having photos of showing people staffing those zero waste stations, the receipts for if you had to rent them or if you purchased them, And then, the receipts that you've purchasing the recyclable, reusable, compostable serviceware, cups, things like that. And then if that vendor does, that zero waste vendor that you've hired does provide a report at the end, again, we would really love to see that. So a big part of the success of this is communicating, as I said earlier, with signage. And signage can look like all kinds of things. I've heard all types of ideas. The top three on the right are copyrighted. Those are from Recycle Across America. The city has actually chosen that as a standard for city facilities so that we can clearly and consistently educate our folks and people who show up at the city facilities what it is we're accepting and what we're collecting. So they're pretty clear images. Ours are going to be bilingual, English and Spanish, something to consider depending on the demographics of your event and where you're going to be, what you're going to be doing. You can see the clarity of a bottle. It's not a brand, so it's not to be confused with, if someone were to say, oh, you only take the Pepsi bottle, not the Coke bottle, so it's real clean and specific. The second set of labels uses more words than image to convey their message. So again, the trash can is generally associated with the landfill or trash. Mixed recycling, pretty much the same thing consistently with all the haulers is plastic bottles, glass bottles, metal cans, paper, and cardboard. So pretty consistently. And then the signage down on the bottom right takes a whole different angle. And I've heard this talked about a lot and seen this previously, that some folks want to make signs based on the three-dimensional item itself. So I guess if you're selling tacos, you could put a taco up there so people could know that goes in the food waste or the compost bin. And maybe you attach an aluminum cup on the recyclable sign and maybe some samples of what's going in the landfill. That's one way to do it. You can do it three-dimensionally, or you can do it with signage. And that requires a whole lot of conversation with your vendors ahead of time. So you have food vendors, maybe. Let's see, you may have an expo, so you may have vendors who are trying to sell or give away product. So that's, you need to talk with all those. Jenny has a great example of an event that she's worked on where she has them sign a letter of commitment that they understand what's required and what the limitations are, and they're committing to do that. So to be a partner for that event. So I would, I'm sure Jenny would love to chat about that. Again, though, the signage is important. It tells the user what they should put where, so make it really clear. And the way things are going to get handled, again, we're going to check with our haulers. We're going to make sure we know that it's going to go. I want to give you a quick snapshot of what's happening with the haulers. Last year, just a lesson I learned from one of the haulers I spoke with is without having those zero waste stations well managed. So even if the person doesn't just stand there the whole time, they're checking all the bins. So you have a rotation of someone whose job is to do that. Really important to do that all throughout the event, because the event that I'm referring to, all the recyclables, I think there wasn't good management at that end, because by the time they got to aggregating everything into the carts or dumpsters at the end for the hauler to collect, all the recyclables were highly contaminated. So it doesn't do any good to try to sort on the back end if you haven't done any checking throughout the event, throughout the time, because paper doesn't take too long to get messed up. You could have a whole cup of someone who didn't finish their lemonade, and that sitting in there will ruin the rest of it later on. So again, we need to, for this level 4, we need to make sure that we have good management. We need to make sure that we have checked with our haulers. Our vendors know what's happening. The hauler knows what's going to happen. And we've identified that the hauler does plan to collect all those materials. So lots of boxes to check, lots of coordination. I highly encourage you to talk to those zero waste vendors. There's several of them available, and I know that they're happy to help. And this is what they do, so they're good at it. And then This is the incentive request, the payment request form. So this is actually attached to the link that's on the page that on the website that tells about the incentives. You can see this is the information that we're looking for you to fill out and attaching, again, proof of purchase, money spent on these so that we can then, the incentive is to provide support for those costs. And lastly, again, at the top there, that's the website address. And now I am happy to take any questions that you have. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can actually see your faces if that's okay.